That's a big step. That's a big commitment. That is your wife also saying, how fast does this work? How do you settle that concern? Because I know there are people here that feel this way. Hey, maybe I'll just invest passively. And that's fine. We need passive investors. But there's a whole lot of people here that are wanting to be GPs, but they don't have money. They don't have the education yet. So how did you sell your wife on this is going to work? We're going to make this work. How do you do that?
That's a tough question to answer. I mean, at the time, we didn't have the best communication. I mean, we have 4 kids. I'm actually homeschooling before I go to work at the restaurant. Then at the restaurant at lunchtime, I'm actually working. I'm doing podcasts. I'm underwriting deals. And then at dinner time on the line, then I go home at night. Julie and I, we started a podcast called the Multifamily Zone Podcast because ultimately we started it 2 years ago. We wanted to understand what really happened. And, we were able to interview Dr. Gary Chapman. I think you guys should go listen to that podcast. And it's really about the 5 love languages. If you've never heard about it, it's just a way to communicate with your spouse. And I think my wife intuitively, we put our trust and faith in God. And she basically said, you know what? If this is what you want to do, if you're really that miserable at the restaurant, I'll have faith in you that it'll work. But it works both ways, Julie. So she gave me all the faith and all the trust, but I had to work as hard as possible. And she saw that I put in the effort. She saw that I was doing 70-hour work weeks. She saw that I was working on the weekends. She saw that I was doing all that effort. And it works both ways. And for me, I couldn't let her down. And it was just baby steps. I mean, you don't have to go into it full time. You don't have to burn the bridges. For us, we bought our first deal in 2013. 2016, I left the restaurant. So you can see there's a 5-year window. Everyone thinks about it's got to be glamorous. You got to burn the bridges. You got to go full time. You can do it incrementally. You can do it with a plan. Proper planning prevents poor performance. And it's okay to look out 5 years and say, I'm going to start today. You have to, with your party, you have to include your significant other. And I've been fortunate now because, like I said, now my whole family is totally intertwined in the education, which is what I wanted. They come to our events. My wife has written a cookbook. A children's book. So she's in that. She's doing the education and the podcast. So it's really a family decision. And she just had faith in me. And ultimately, if you're going to do that, you need to put out. You cannot make excuses that you're tired, that you're sick. For me, it was constantly going back to Knoxville, underwriting deals, and what money I did have, I diverted it. I blew up my 401k. Had that money go there. And it was really, I had to really take that education seriously. I had to take that mentorship seriously. I had to show her that I knew what I was doing before, I go squander. And I was surrounded by people that thought I was crazy. I mean, how many out there have family members that say, hey, you're crazy? My mom did not know that I invested with my partner, Jake, until I had 200 units because she had seen another real estate venture that we had messed up back in 2005. And that never left her mind. And for me, it was a learning lesson. And I'm doing these deals. And that day that I go to my mom, sit down with her in the parking lot, I say, Mom, I'm going to be leaving the restaurant in about 6 months. And she looked at me. She had no idea. I said, I've got about 200 units now. I'm going to, work for the next 6 months to a year. But I just didn't tell her because what was that negative? You have 6 mouths to feed. How are you going to do it? It's too risky. And now that I look back, I would have had that restaurant in New York with COVID. I would have had one restaurant, would have been completely shut down. So it's just one of those things that whatever we do in life, there's just a risk, whether you're working corporate, whether you're working W-2, whether you're an entrepreneur, there's risk in anything in life. I just ultimately knew that wasn't my sole purpose. My sole purpose was ultimately becoming financially free through this vehicle of multifamily. And then finding this company, Jake and Gino, with the education and starting that, writing books and teaching kids about financial intelligence. That's what ultimately what led me to do what I'm doing right now. But it was hard work in the beginning. And to have that trust and that faith amongst my wife, really, it put me at ease. All I knew that I had to do, all that I had to do is just put that hard work in. And then if I knew that put that hard work in, sooner or later, the harder you work, the luckier you get. That's what ultimately happens. And the luckier you get, the harder you work. And it was just constantly putting that work.